This is Lysha Holmes, and I'm your host of the Recruitment podcast. And this is possibly the most special guest I've ever had. And that's in the last few seasons that we've had the absolute honour of sharing with you all. And the reason that this is the most special guest is because it's my absolute right-hand woman, mini-me. Welcome to you all today, Shannon Rowlands of Recruitment. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Now, I'm not being facetious, am I, in saying that it's literally taken 3.5 years to get you sat here on the show?
Probably longer. Actually feels really weird because usually I'm the one in the background doing all the editing. So actually being here on the podcast feels weird.
The amount of people that have asked me over the years, why is Shannon not coming on? Why is Shannon not doing it? And it's because it's not something that you enjoy particularly doing, is it, broadcasting?
No, I think when we did the Rec Expo, that was the first time in a long time, probably since university, that I've done public speaking. So that was push myself out my comfort zone. So now doing this, it's the first podcast I've done, actually, I just realised.
It is the first podcast.
Yeah.
And for anybody that's listened and watched us and followed our journey, you'll know that we've talked many times about imposter syndrome and, you know, your limiting beliefs and finding within yourself to push yourself. And that's one of the main reasons that I've persisted with Shannon Rowlands to get her on the show, because I actually think you've got a really amazing testimony to share, not least because I don't often talk about specifically my day job as a Rec2Rec, but I'm going to let you do that today because Rec2Rec's got a rather dark and mysterious reputation, hasn't it? But I can't believe anybody that's following this show doesn't know who you are, because you were obviously the pinnacle of the production. We couldn't have this show without you. But for those who are not yet familiar with you, Shannon, please will you tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and why you sat here today?
Yeah, so I'm Shannon Rowlands. I'm originally from North Wales. Went to uni in Manchester, and then now I live in West and Yorkshire in Leeds, just outside of Leeds. And I joined Recruitment back in 2017, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Time. So now I've been here for over 6 years, cover the North West and Yorkshire as well. And also I'm the editor, producer of the podcast.
You are. Amazing human being. You really are. And it's so lovely to sort of get our audience to get to know you on a different level as well today. So tell us about your journey into the Rec2Rec market, because you didn't just land in Rec2Rec for Key Recruitment, did you? Tell us a little bit about how you came about being a recruiter to recruiter.
Yeah, so back in university, I had a placement year and I kind of didn't know what to do, to be honest. So a lot of my friends, one of my friends went to America to work on in hospitality, and then a few of my other friends moved back home, and I just thought, I don't want to move back to Wales, but I want to do something that's not going to be going back to uni, because when they go back to the final year, I didn't want to be finishing university before them, if that makes sense. So I had a couple of interviews for placement years, and I managed to get one into a recruitment firm, Starkbrooks, back in 2015, I think it was. Basically there I was a resourcer, helping out on admin, bits of everything, to be honest, just doing the tea, the coffee, but I loved that. And then in my final year, I worked there part-time, just doing bits of everything again. And towards the end, my manager at the time, Tom Rogers, who's now one of our clients, NSTL, he put me in touch with Lysha, originally to put out to her clients, basically. So then we met in the Refuge, wasn't it? The Refuge?
I think it was the Refuge, yeah, which was over the road from my office at the time.
Yeah. And I think it was lunchtime, and we sat down, you spoke to me about my background, what I was looking for initially to put out to your clients. And then you said, you want me to work with you? And that was literally from there. I tried to put you off, didn't I? I do remember, because I think I probably matched you up to 2 or 3 companies, because I never do more than that. And then I said, but actually I'm looking for a resourcer. And I remember your body language just changed, like, what? Yeah.
And I really tried to put you off, and I was convincing you to go and look at these other companies. And I think you rang me the next day, didn't you, and said, I really want to interview for you, like to work for Key.
And then I remember coming up to Workplace, meeting Laura, doing a little presentation, and that was it, wasn't it, really?
You didn't just do a presentation, you actually wrote a blog. Like, you really went you went above and beyond. You negotiated your salary very well, if I remember rightly.
Yeah,
you did. You were just an absolute instant. So yeah, so that was, I think I interviewed you in the April 2017, but obviously you hadn't yet graduated. You were graduating in the June.
And then, so that was my first year really, wasn't it? So June 2017, obviously getting my feet under the ground, learning from you and Laura the first couple of years. To be honest, the first couple of years is such a whirlwind now. I can't really remember the ins and outs.
Pre-COVID.
Yeah, I remember my first placement, which was about 6 weeks in. It was for a little junior. I sat with you and Laura. I remember that feeling that made me realise, right, this is what I want to do. It's this. I did a placement. I was doing my finance recruitment as well. I did a placement there, a couple of placements. It wasn't the same feeling. I can't really describe what the feeling was and what the difference was, but I think it was obviously a different company and a different market. And then, so fast forward, then we had 2019, wasn't it? I sat down with you and I realised I love Manchester, but my partner's from Leeds and we kind of want to make that next move. So I think I asked you, do you mind if I move to Leeds? And you were like, yes, go for it. So since then, I've been growing my Yorkshire market since 2019, which has gone very well and I've absolutely loved doing it. So moved to Leeds 2019, and then 2020 we had the dreaded COVID, which made a huge spanner in the works. It was such a whirlwind then, wasn't it? I think I went on furlough for 3 weeks, came back, and we were like, what should we do now? So then we started doing the newsletter. Do you remember doing that every week?
Yes, I do.
And that's when the podcast started as well.
Accidentally. It was. Do you remember? It was Joe Gregory. Joe agreed to come in, and I said, I think we're just going to start sharing tips for people, because we're all sat there going, what the hell are we doing? Like we had clients. The reason I brought you back off furlough so quickly was that I was like, there are jobs out there. There aren't a lot, but there are jobs out there. And I made a couple of placements somehow. I don't know how I did it. And so and you were desperate to come back, weren't you? You were going mad at home, and you would like every day you were like, I've got this webinar and I'm doing this, and I'm like, you can do what you like. You're on furlough.
Home workouts, and I was like, I'm getting fed up for this. So
up on the bread, all that. No, it's good. I just want to pause at COVID, because I think a lot of what you said there is, because I always share any messages I get on LinkedIn as the host. I don't know if anybody ever shares you messages, but they do to me as a host. We get a lot of newbie recruiters that listen to this show, and obviously it's because you want to learn. It's a learning platform. It's free access to people like yourself who've gone on a journey. We've got leaders from across the world. And actually what you said there is that, I think, moving into a different sector, you did finance for a short while, moved into the Rec2Rec market, working in a boutique business. We were in the office full time. You learn so much by just listening and, observing me and Laura. And obviously there were a number of training courses that, you went on and stuff. And, that I think you had this voracious appetite. But I love that you still remember that first placement. And I think the reason that one maybe stood out for you more than maybe the finance ones is that, and this is my first proper question to you, I think. So a lot of people who, do the Rec2Rec market haven't actually worked in another market before, but you did. You worked in finance, and obviously I worked in other markets as well. But how do you think Rec2Rec is different to other recruitment sectors?
Yeah. So when I was doing finance recruitment, obviously I was working a lot with account assistants, those doing their ACAs, doing like finance related roles. So when I moved into Rec2Rec, I just love the fact that I've been working with clients and candidates who are going into different industries as well. So we don't focus on one area. So I absolutely love that. So one day I could be speaking to a tech recruiter who's really passionate about that market. And the next day I could be speaking to a marketing recruiter who absolutely loves that, working with agencies and being creative. So I love that variety. Although it's amazing, does still come with the challenges where it's pretty tough, because although they do the same job as us, sometimes not a lot of the time, but quite a lot of the time, you do get some cancellations, you get some ghosting and the odd ghosting. Yeah. So that still happens. It's not like it doesn't just happen in Rec2Rec, it happens in all industries as well. So
no, I agree with you totally. I mean, Rec2Rec in some ways is no different to other markets. It's human beings, isn't it? And if somebody's got the volition to not return a call or return a text message or update you, it doesn't matter whether they're a recruiter or an engineer or a doctor or a teacher, but you would think, you would assume that because the recruiter has had it done to them, that they wouldn't then replicate that behavior. But the sad case is it does actually happen, like you say, not very often, but it does happen, unfortunately. I want to unlock the pause and then go back to 2020, because you know, for a lot of people, certainly in your peer group, who, you know, you've got 7-8 years experience, 6-7-8 years of experience, you know, you're mid-career, you know, you've got good solid experience behind you. But when COVID happened, you were still on this learning journey. And, you know, one of the, you know this because you edit the show, one of the key topics we talk about every week, week in, week out, is the sort of hybrid versus remote. At the time, obviously you had just moved to Leeds. So we'd gone from fully in the office to 2019. We then went hybrid. I think we were doing 3 days in Manchester, 2 days at home, and it was working brilliantly. And then COVID happened. Yeah. And then, of course, we went remote, and we would then do the odd day back in the office until sadly workplace didn't make it and it closed. How has your personal experience been having done all three at different stages in your career? And where do you see the benefits and the downsides to each of those things?
So I think if I didn't start off in terms of being in the office, I don't think I'd be the recruiter I am now, or have the success I've had. So I think if I wasn't next to you and Laura all day, every day, not just you and Laura, but around other professions as well. So obviously we're in a shared workspace, we had that benefit, but we were also around, also some of our clients were in shared workspace with us as well. So I think if I didn't have that, I wouldn't be the way I am now. So I think it brings you out of your shell quite a lot. And obviously I just learned from hearing you and Laura on the phone. So I think if I didn't have that, I wouldn't be able to do what I do now, I don't believe. That's why I think some recruiters, not everyone, when they've joined post-COVID and they've gone straight in, or around COVID, when they went straight into a fully remote role, they've not had that experience or that exposure, which I think they'll find difficult going forward.
I think the osmosis effect should not be underestimated. And I say that hand on heart. I'm a huge believer that, you know, hybrid is fantastic, but actually what Shannon says there is so accurate, that you learn. And like you say, what I love is that you said not just recruiters, you know, we had property developers next to us, we had lawyers next to us. There were some brilliant recruitment firms in that. I think they were all there because of us. Yeah. Simpson Judge, Hyper Recruitment. There was loads of people in there. And actually you are picking up, you're not listening into each other. I mean, let's just state that we weren't listening in, but you're just picking up on the energy
without even realizing either. So that's why I probably sound like you on the phone sometimes.
People often used to say, "Is Shannon your daughter?" And I'm going, technically not, although she's young enough to be. No, that's really good. Okay, so I that's a really important point made. So then we went hybrid. How do you think that affected you in positive or negative way?
Positively, I think it kind of gave me that. It showed me that you had that trust as well. Do you know what I mean? I could work from home and I could work independently. I think it gave me that freedom as well. So I love being in the office. I love that. But I also love those few days at home as well. So give me the right balance. So that worked really well for me. But obviously then COVID totally changed that. And now we do work remotely. But I've now obviously got a great routine. I love my little routine. But now I'm 6 years in. I couldn't have done it straight away. I couldn't have gone straight to remote because it'd been like, gosh, what am I doing? Yeah. But now I'm obviously a bit older, more mature, I think.
You were born mature, Shannon Rowlands.
God, I know.
That's a little quit there.
So I feel like, it works really well for us now. But I think if we were bigger and if we were to hire trainees, it wouldn't work. I don't think at the moment.
Yeah, no, I agree with you totally. And I think that's a really important word that you just used there, really flippantly, but actually you have a good routine. And I think you are very disciplined. Yeah. And I think it's also important to mention that you and I do get together once a fortnight. You know, we make a day of going to see clients, whether it's me coming over to you or whatever. And in addition, we do speak about 75,000 times a day.
That's the thing. If we weren't speaking all the time, it's communication, isn't it? That's the main thing. Even like you and Laura were in the group chat on WhatsApp. We're always chatting on there. So we didn't have that, then you'd feel very
disconnected. You would. You'd feel disconnected. And I think it's really important that we talked about that, because I think there'll be a lot of people, like I say, who are in the early stage of their career who maybe are resenting the fact that their remote work has been revoked. Maybe they're being asked back into the office more, but actually hearing it from the horse's mouth from somebody that's been there and gone on that journey, there is a reason why you're being brought back in the office, because part of your learning journey is listening to other people. Yeah. But actually that can then cause a problem with more experienced people who don't need to be in an office, that don't want to be in an office. But I think that's where hybrid is for me, it's a great answer. It's a great solution for where you're compromising on what people need. So I think that's really important. So you've obviously interviewed hundreds and hundreds of recruiters over the last 6.5 years. And you know, one of the key things that we do, why we wear a Rec2Rec, I know you were like, why do people have Rec2Recs? Is to benchmark. So what do you think, in your professional opinion, are the qualities of what makes a top recruiter?
It's definitely got to be resilience. I think anyone would think that. It's not an easy job. Anyone that thinks, anyone can get into recruitment, anyone can. It's the barriers to entry are very low, but resilience, having to deal with very difficult situations constantly and randomly, can happen at any time, days, the weekend, in the night. So you've just got to be very thick-skinned and just keep on pushing forward. I think as well, you've got to genuinely care. So it's not all about the money. So for me, I am obviously I'm money motivated. I'm trying to save up for a house. But for me, it's knowing that I've placed someone into their dream job and helped one of my clients solve one of their problems. That's something that really motivates me. So it's someone that's not always motivated about money. Obviously, money is important. Everyone knows that. But I think it's got to come together, if that makes sense. So I think that's the main thing. And discipline, I think we spoke about it before. So yeah, I think that's a really big thing. And work ethic. You can't just shy away from it. You've got to keep showing up. Yeah, they're probably the main one.
I actually think you're right. And I've also had the honour and pleasure of interviewing some, thousands of people. I mean, I've done Rec2Rec for 22 years, but, if I think about the top performers, the ones that are consistent, it's all the things that Shannon said there. It's nothing more than that. It's not rocket science to be a top biller. It's just that work. I think work ethic never gets talked about enough, Shannon. I mean, you are the epitome of work ethic. There's nothing you won't do. You apologise if you go out for an hour. But it's not just presenteeism. It's genuinely, productive work and making things happen. And it's all about the quality of the work. So I think that's really important. Okay, flipping it then. You've obviously had the absolute pleasure of partnering companies over the last 6.5 years, some of whom multiple times. You've built teams for them. What for you makes a good company to hire for? What do you look for?
Yeah, so I always think with clients, I know you think the same. I wouldn't want to partner a client where I couldn't see myself working. That makes sense. So it's a company that I really buy into their values, but also a company who really do something and show that they are what they say they are. I think that's a big thing. There's not always just a tick box exercise. They actually are very forward thinking, doing what they say they do. And just in terms of us partnering with them, I think making that process slick, smooth, transparent, being honest, and communicating. I absolutely love building relationships with clients. And I love clients I can just pick up the phone to have a normal chat with for about 5-10 minutes before actually speaking about recruitment. We're getting to know them as a person, but I like that when they get to know me as well. They don't just, I think that comes down to them valuing what we do for them. Don't just think that we're just one of these Rec2Recs, the devils. Do you know what I mean? We're actually them out. So yeah, I think for clients, it's all about building those relationships and long-term relationships. We're not just here for the short term, understanding the way that we work as well. We're not just going to come at them with loads of CVs. It's going to be a CV, or not CV, to be honest. It's going to be a profile or a candidate that really matches what they're looking for, and the candidate really matches what they're looking for, if that makes sense, and making sure that it's all right on both sides. Company that we love to work with is those that actually pay their invoices on time. Obviously, that's a big thing.
I can hear Laura shouting, yes.
And also, just in terms of them as a business, how they look after their staff, that's really important. So obviously, if we're going to place people into that business, we need to know that they're going to be looked after as well.
Yeah.
So I think that comes down to what development do they give to their employees, the onboarding, that's really important. You don't want someone to be thrown into the deep end from day one. And the training, the development, what can they give to them? So I think, a company that really cares about the staff, do what they say they're going to do, treat us with respect and value. I think that's really important to us.
And I absolutely echo everything that you say there. And I think for me, as I'm listening to you speaking, you're basically talking about respect, and it's about, a true partnership. And all too often, I think, the feedback on other Rec2Recs potentially. I mean, we obviously partner other Rec2Recs. There are other Rec2Recs out there who do a fantastic job and are really, formidable in what they do as well. I think the market's big enough for everybody. I've always been a huge believer in healthy competition, but there are some who do act in a transactional way. But equally, we have clients that potentially see us in that way, and that's not how we want to act or embark upon it. So I think what you've established there is what makes a really good partnership, and I really love that everyone can hear and see your energy and your passion for getting it right. You know, when you get it right, there's no better feeling, is there really?
Yeah, that is the end goal, isn't it?
It really is. So what would your advice be to, let's think, because you know that we tend to get feedback from two main groups of people. One is leaders, which is fantastic. And one is the junior people sort of moving their way through the first few roles in recruitment. That's not to say you don't listen and you're not in the sort of middle, like Shannon's level. But what would you say to people who are in the early parts of their career? Like, what would your advice be to them in terms of how to be their best selves, you know, be the best performers they can be, and become, you know, a really intricate part of the business that they work for?
I think, like I say, consistency, and that's a big thing, isn't it? And showing up, just really immersing yourself in your market as well. I think that comes down to being passionate about what you do, doesn't it, as well? So I know some people say, do you need to be passionate about the market that you recruit in? And sometimes people say, I've seen people say, no, you don't. You can learn any market, but I think you've got to be passionate about what you're selling. So otherwise it's not going to be a long-term thing. So I do think immersing yourself in your market and pushing yourself out your boundaries like I am today.
You're doing a good job.
And always seeking advice, always looking for ways to develop yourself. Don't just, obviously some people get very comfortable in the role, don't they? So I think it's always important to keep on learning and developing, so otherwise you're never going to grow. And yeah, I think that's probably the main ones. I think you're
absolutely right. I mean, I do just want to, again, you know, really echo what you've just said there about what is often disregarded in somebody's career. So, you know, I'm not bothered about what desk I do. I'm not bothered about what market, as long as I can make money. And it's like, I've never subscribed to that. I genuinely think that you are more successful in life if you're doing something that you enjoy doing and you enjoy having the conversations. And if you're, you know, interviewing people that you've got no interest in what they do, you're never going to immerse yourself in the market. You're never going to become that go-to person. So I think it's an absolutely essential part of what will keep you, if you're listening to this now and you're thinking about, is recruitment for me, what will give you that longevity is doing a market that you really enjoy, and that you will then become like this peer, because that's what's happening to you now. You started 6.5 years ago in recruitment, and some of the people you were working with at that time at a similar level, and now you're decision makers.
Yeah.
And that's the cycle that that every recruitment consultant can go through, that you become this peer to the people as they move through their career path. That's what you'll do with them. You'll mirror them, and it's just an absolutely brilliant way to do.
I think with that as well. So when I first started off in recruitment, obviously that was finance recruitment. Nothing to say I didn't enjoy it, but I didn't have had as much as a passion as I do now. Which makes sense. So I think now it's made me where I am today because I've really enjoyed the market.
Definitely. You know, like a lot of the podcasts that I've recorded over the last couple of years, people are talking about the threat of AI and how technology is going to take over, etc. I mean, if we hire more people like you, it's not going to matter, because it's all about the human touch, isn't it? I mean, where do you see your evolution in recruitment? You've been in recruitment, you know, since technology has dominated our industry, but where do you see the evolution of recruitment going forward?
So I think as long as you're not a transactional recruiter, there's always going to be a place for us. But if you're just there churning CVs or just firing out CVs, using job boards all the time, things are going to they will decline. But I think if you're bringing in that personal approach, that human element, everyone's always going to need that. You can't do that all through robots, if that makes sense. Well, I hope not.
No, I think we're a long way off that.
Yeah.
It's the nuances, it's the behaviours, it's the buying signals.
Yeah, and you can, like, whenever I speak to a candidate, I get to know everything about them. You're not going to get that if a robot was just doing it from a CV or using all this AI and tech. It's different, isn't it? So I get to know a candidate, really know a client, find out what works, what doesn't work, what's going to work next to them, and making sure that the partnership's right. So I think with that human element, it's never going to die down.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I really do. And what's your biggest ick in recruitment?
Ghosting.
I think I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah.
What would you say to the ghosters, if you could say something to them?
Stop being pathetic and reply.
Just send a WhatsApp. So easy.
Literally, it takes 2 seconds anyway.
I think the whole world unites behind you. I really do. As well as doing your day job so brilliantly, you rightly said at the start of this show that you produce and have produced this show right from day dot, which was all by accident. Neither of us planned the Recruitment podcast. And you have become, such a stalwart in doing this that we've had a number of people over the years who've approached you to say, can you help me? In fact, it is a little known fact that Shannon has actually productized her whole recruitment service of producing a recruitment podcast, if anyone is interested. But talk us through what you've learned since you've produced this show and what advice you would give, because a lot of people are thinking, I need to get on this podcast bandwagon because it ain't going anywhere. It's growing and growing in momentum. What would your advice be?
Yes, I always think actually, if we didn't have COVID, would we have started the podcast? I think we would have, but I wonder how would we have done it? And do you know what I mean? So it's been...
we had the key moment, didn't we? We had the key moment in I think we started that in 2018, and it ran for about a year, and we used to do it. It's funny how it's kind of gone full circle. We did it when we were in the office. We used to invite guests in. We still did it once a month, like on a day, but we would invite guests in every hour and bring them tea and coffee and stuff, and it was really nice. But actually I always thought that was a bit of an inconvenience to the guests to have to ship into Manchester. I always felt really guilty about it. So we did, and then of course our producer at the time, he went into a full-time job because he was a freelancer at the time, Gareth. Big shout out to Gareth. And we paused. So we had kind of done it. We were actually probably the first recruitment podcast, if I think back. So would we have done it? I don't know. I would probably, knowing me, if COVID hadn't happened, and I look around now and see all these amazing, because I always listen to podcasts ever since they started. I would probably be getting a little bit of FOMO about it, thinking we should be doing the same, but not really knowing when we'd find the time to do it.
That's the thing. I was thinking, would we have done it the way we have in terms of, because I had nothing else to do. We all had stuff to do, obviously, but it wasn't doing the day-to-day jobs recruitment. So I was thinking, what else can I do in my spare time? So I think I just did it all on Google. I'm sure I just typed into Google how to start up your own podcast, and I went from there. Followed step-by-step guides, found a podcast host, and literally just followed steps by steps, and I literally got there in the end. But it did take a while of trial and error.
It was trial and error, and I think that's why I know you're far too humble to ever push this out there, but Shannon has got a checklist, a step-by-step guide. We're not charging a fortune, but we're valuing Shannon's time and effort and the pain that she went through over a couple of years, finding the best hosting, finding the best products out there to make this as streamlined as possible. So if you are interested, this wasn't meant to be a pitch, but please drop Shannon a message or me for more information on that. But I think, for me, I know you're a massive digester of podcasts as well. Are there any podcast shows in particular that you listen to in addition to the Recruitment podcast that our listeners might want to download as well?
Yes, of course, the usual Diary CEO, that's got to be mentioned. High Performance Podcast. I do love a really light-hearted, funny one. I've got quite a few. I think what's top of the name now, what are they called? Wednesdays, We Drink Wine. I love that one. There's a lot of foodie ones that I love. Yeah. I just love listening to ones that at the end of the day, I can just switch off, go for a little walk and turn them on. What's your favourites?
Well, definitely the Diary CEO and High Performance Podcast. I absolutely love How to Fail with Elizabeth Day. That is possibly one of my favourite ones. I've got massive crush on her. She's just so amazing. I love the Midpoint with Gabby Logan, which is all about the supposed midlife, which apparently I'm in. Which, although it goes to the age of 68, I found out the other day, 45 to 68 is midlife. But she has some really great guests on there, and it's really high energy. I love the Zoe podcast. So Zoe is obviously the health company, which is co-owned by Stephen Bartlett, actually. But it's all around nutrition, well-being, fitness, and they're really short episodes, which obviously anyone that listens to this knows that I'm a huge follower of the short ones. And they're really easy to listen to. I like history ones. So Dead to Me is really funny if anybody's into history ones, because they've got it's one of the writers of the QI elves from the QI show with Stephen Fry, and he's a historian, and he has on a real historian, and then he has on a comedian, and they talk about, it might be Boudicca or it might be Julius Caesar, and it'll be all facts around them, but it's always the funny parts of it. So, and I like food ones too, I have to say. I like the one with Jessie Ware and her mum. I can't think what it's called.
I love that one, yeah. I think I like Nick.
You told me about that one. Table Manners.
Yeah, take them.
It's absolutely, because some of the food ones they eat and I can't bear it. I can't bear listening to them eat. So that one's a really good one because they're at home and her and her mum, and they're Jewish, so it's all like Jewish food. And they've had on like, you know, Nigella Lawson, they've had Ed Balls on, they've had like really diverse people, but it's really good fun. I mean, Fern Cotton, there are so many podcasts out there, which is why at the start of this show I always do a thank you, saying thank you for listening, because it's the most amazing minefield of information out there, and I think podcasts are here to stay, and we always are so grateful to you listening to us in our community, and to you, Shannon, for producing it. It's just so exciting. So before we sign off, as we record this is before our live podcast event.
Oh yeah.
We'll actually have to make sure if we can switch things around a bit. I think this needs to go out before the live podcast event. That's to anybody that hasn't yet bought tickets. We are going to be in person in Manchester with 8 guests. It's going to be quick fire. It's going to be a way to create this holistic approach to getting the best performing you in 2024. And I couldn't have done this without Shannon. So what are you most looking forward to about the event?
Gosh, it's going to be just a room full of everyone that we've known and met over the past few years, which is very exciting. We've had actually, I think we've got about a third, or just over a third of people that have bought tickets so far. Obviously, we've got about 6 weeks left. So I think it's definitely going to sell out. It's going to be very busy. It's going to be nice to meet people that we've seen on LinkedIn, seen on webinars and Zooms and things like that, but never actually met.
Actually met, and it's going to be totally bizarre. It is going to be really crazy. So, and if you're listening to this after the 23rd November, stay tuned, because we are already planning a London live podcast event in 2024. We've already got 3 speakers lined up. So it's definitely worth subscribing to this channel. Make sure you're following our page on LinkedIn, and keep your eyes on what we do next, because this show gets booked up months in advance. If you are interested in becoming a guest, like Shannon has, push yourself out your comfort zone. It really hasn't been that hard, has it, Shannon?
I just like sitting in a room with you and talking to you.
Well, it is just like sitting in a room talking to us, but we've probably been a little bit more appropriate and less, you know, inappropriate with our language. And if you are interested in becoming a guest, then definitely drop me or Shannon a message, or drop us a line on the Recruiters Recruitment podcast page. But before we let her go, I want to know, what have you got in store to make your 2024 the best yet? So
for me, 2024 is going to be my last year before I'm 30, which is I feel like I need to do a few things before I'm 30. I've got a few things in mind, just in terms of like personal stuff. I need to buy a house, definitely. That's one of them. And I think just for next year, just to be happy, healthy, and have a successful year. And I'm really hoping we have no unplanned events go on. That's going to screw things up again for the market. But hopefully, touch wood, we have a bright and successful.
But the reality is, Shannon Rowlands, as you and I both know, one of my key phrases is that we can only control our controllables. And if we get another COVID, if we do get, I mean, as we record this now, there is a war going on in the Middle East. We can only control what we can control. Thank you for everything. Thank you for joining us on the Recruiters Recruitment Podcast.